Russ Dorsey back with us. Russ, what's going on, dude? Let's actually just jump right into free agent talk. So you put out there Tim Anderson's willingness to play some second base, which, of course, opens up more suitors for him, too. What do you think about his case this offseason? Coming off a brutal year in terms of his numbers, but also if you look at the previous 4 or 5 years, they did a pretty deep dive recently. I mean, it's been pretty damn good. You want to talk batting average, and I mean, his sprint speed was down a lot last season, but I think there was a lot going on with his knee, with off the field issues, etc. What do you think?
Yeah, I think when you look at Tim Anderson, obviously being able to position yourself at short and second base helps out his case in a market that doesn't have a ton of middle infield depth. If you look at the market, it's TA, you have Paul DeYoung out there, Kike Hernandez, depending on where you want to play him, Brandon Crawford, but does Brandon Crawford want to come back and play still? He's also 38 years old. So I think it's a good situation for Tim Anderson to be in at 30 years old. He's a guy that did have a really down year last year. He was one of the worst offensive players in the big leagues. But to your point, Scott, the previous 3-4 years before that, this guy won a batting title, all-star. And if you want to bet on a guy who did have some injuries last year and the previous year and is only 30 years old, you put him at second base, a little less pressure on him as he gets older, and maybe give him a 1-year deal. I think it's a good bet for a team that doesn't need Tim Anderson to be the guy.
So what does that look like? What does that look like for a team? If they need a second base help, are they willing to go 2 years, or is he more not willing to go 2 years because he would like to come back on the free agent market again next year?
Depends on who that team is, right? Because if you're looking at a team like that's a contender that says, hey, we need a stopgap for a year, TA, you can come in, build your stock back up, play for the postseason, I would think that any free agent would be more inclined to do that. I don't know if there's going to be a team based on everything we just talked about with the year that he had and some of the injuries that would go multiple years. Maybe that's out there, right? You get yourself in a bidding war in a market that doesn't have a ton of middle infielders. But I think you're probably looking at a 1-year deal for TA.
I can't imagine, Russ, any team going more than 1 year plus an option maybe. Just because I'm looking at his numbers from last year, and again, these are the basic numbers, but I'm sure you probably looked at these, but take a guess what his OPS plus was last year.
75?
60. He hit one homer last year in 524 plate appearances. His OBP 286, his slug 296.
But project forward. You're telling me you think he's done, or do you want to look
I'm just
before
saying,
that?
All right, so the year before his OPS was 734, right?
He's never been a high OPS guy, though.
Yeah, he's always going to be a guy who swings his way on base. Yeah,
true, but that's the thing. His defense was not good this year.
Well, he's moving to second.
Okay, I mean, is it just everyone just automatically assumes you move from short to second, your defense gets better?
It does.
Stop.
Shut up. It just doesn't automatically get better.
No, it does.
Actually, second base for a lot of guys is harder than shortstop.
Not for Tim.
Okay. Well, you just want Tim on the Angels, so say
yeah,
it.
You're
WBC.
Yeah. And then
I didn't say one thing
and
then
McNeil played. Remember the game McNeil played, and he was sitting in the corner. Remember, and they showed him, they kept showing him, and he was sitting by himself. It was really awkward. Everyone else was remember that game, Russ, in the WBC where Tim played second, and then they played McNeil at second the one game, and they kept showing Tim, and he was sitting in the corner by himself, with his arms crossed. Remember that? It was super awkward.
Find it and send it to me.
It was weird. But Tim
wants to play.
Tim, of course he wants to play. But Tim was given every opportunity. The White Sox. I'm actually shocked the White Sox didn't pick him up for the $14 million because he's been there. They know him. I know he went through some stuff off the field. I know he's going through some stuff. He went through the Jose Ramirez thing. But for me, if I'm the White Sox, and listen, they can spew whatever they want to spew. They're not competing next year. So why would you not get Tim Anderson? You just let him go for nothing. Sign him for the $14 million. It's not like it's $34 million. It's not like, $14 million is not a huge number in today's game.
But he's going to sign for half that.
Okay. But you might, let's say he goes to spring training, he goes off, he gets into the first month, you can trade him and at least get something back for him.
Okay, so let me present a scenario. Let's say 1 year, $8 million from the Angels or something like that. The White Sox can call him and say, "Hey, dude,
That's not happening.
1 year, $10 million."
That never happens.
Okay, but what if he gets that call? He says no? I mean, I think he needs a change of scenery anyway, Russ.
Yeah.
I think he's been at one org for a long time. It's been a toxic culture there in general with the White Sox lately. Let him move on. I mean, change of scenery is a great thing in baseball more than maybe any other sport.
I agree with you, Scott. I think I don't think the White Sox thing is happening. I'll tell you that right now. I'm with AJ on that one. I think for him, depending on how many teams are out there, he's going to be able to say, all right, let me sit down and say, all right, is it the Angels? That is a team that I've heard that is out there. Obviously, it's been reported. There's some other teams that have been poking around, not ready to report on those teams just yet. But imagine one of those teams that was poking around at him at the deadline, circle back. When you don't have to trade assets, you can just spend money. Yeah, I think for Tim Anderson, it's a prove it year, right? Go out there and prove to people that, one, you could stay healthy, and two, you can bounce back and be the offensive player that you have been the 3-4 years prior to this past season.
All right. Over under. White Sox traded. I'm setting it at 2.5.
2.5. I'm trying to count how many tradable assets they actually have on that roster right now.
Cease, Bummer. Cease and Bummer are the two big ones.
Cease, Bummer, Aloy.
They're not trading Luis Robert.
No.
Aloy would be one, but I don't know they're going to want to sell low on him. They're not going to trade Luis Robert. He's locked into
there's
a
4.
great deal.
There's 4 possible, and I said
Bummer,
it at 2.5 because
Aloy.
I think Bummer. I think Robert's on that list. You can't not listen to Robert.
He'd be the guy you get the most
full-on.
for. I just have a hard time believing, based on the contract situation, you're not rushed to move Robert. You know what I mean? Like if you wanted to start the season, say we're gonna have Luis Robert on the roster, or we don't want to trade Luis Robert at all. You see how the first half goes. You know how losing affects guys' psyche, and you say, hey, if we can get this guy to a winning situation. But are you going to trade a guy who's one of the premier center fielders in the game?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to, but how far away are you from actually contending for something? Not just we're going to go out there and compete. Every team says that. Are you competing for a championship, or are you competing to not get blown out on a nightly basis? Right? I think that's the question they got to ask themselves. You got to be really honest, right? They were honest with themselves saying, hey, we got to turn the page from Tim Anderson. So now that you've done that, hey, what are you looking at as far as Andrew Benintendi, right? Like, what are you looking at as far as Robert and Cease, who you didn't feel rushed to move at the deadline? I think they need to have these honest conversations about where they are and where they're going.
I think Benintendi can't move because they're not gonna pay down money when they just signed him.
Largest contract in history of White Sox.
And my thing with Luis Robert, Kratz, is they did a scrap it all down and rebuild situation. It didn't work. They're about to do it again, because if you trade Robert, that is the total white flag. That is telling your fan base, don't come. Don't show up for a few years, okay?
Listen,
just forget about us. We don't exist.
The White Sox
have to have somebody like that to still build around. Plus, he's not old. I understand you can get stuff for him, but when does getting stuff for guys get old? Just because there's a new GM who's been with the team for a while?
Who said he doesn't like the team? Who said he doesn't like the team? He doesn't like how it was built. You're not going to go out and get
tell him to go
guys.
Say he doesn't like 26-year-old Luis Robert, who's a total 5+ win player.
That's one of 26, though. That's one of 26.
Russ, you know this. You're in Chicago. Russ, you're in Chicago. The White Sox just blew up the team pretty much at the trade deadline last year. Okay, they fired the GM. They brought in a new GM who, let's be serious, the fans weren't very happy about who they hired. This is not, these are facts, okay? They just lost their TV. They just lost their TV guy to a division rival, Jason Benetti, who many people consider one of the best. I've worked with him. I love that guy. Right now, you're going to go to the fans and say, "Oh yeah, by the way, we're going to get rid of our 5-tool center fielder who's under a great contract, and we're going to start over again
in a bad division.
That's winnable if we spend money.
The Twins are cutting payroll.
Dude, can I just tell you that there would be an absolute fucking implosion by the fans? They're already doing it. You can ask Russ if you go on Twitter and you go on whatever. there's already basically whatever you want to, I don't know, I don't want to say a riot because it's not the right word, but there's like a uprising of White Sox fans, like uproar, because they're like, I am not buying season tickets. I am not going to games. They canceled. They're not doing Sox Fest again for the second year in a row. Like, I think the only team that not doing it again. So it's just like, what? They have to keep somebody, and Luis Robert is who you got to build your team around.
I hear you, and I'm with you. And if I had to say definitively one way or another, if I felt, hey, are they going to move him? That I don't think they're going to move Luis Robert. Right? It just doesn't make sense based on where the contract is, the value in that deal, based on what he signed for when they got him. Somebody has to go out there and play center field, and so for me, I think yes. To Kratzy's question, are they going to move guys? Yeah, I think you have to, right? Because you can say everything you want about going out there and competing, but the reality is Chris Getz was honest. Hey, I don't like this roster and how it was built. Then you have to do something about that if you're the GM of that team. So I think the team's going to look different by the time those guys get to Glendale in 2024. It's just a matter of who's playing short for them. I imagine Roberts in center field, and who's in that rotation?
2.5, over or under?
Over.
Under. I think most teams and GMs say they're going to do stuff, and then they don't. When we had all the Yankee conversations going on the past week with Cashman's comments, I looked back when they signed Carlos Rodon, and so they got Rodon and re-signed Judge last year. This was what they said when they signed Rodon. It was like something along the lines of, we're just getting started, more to come, right? From Hal Steinbrenner. They did literally zero after that. Even if they wanted to do something, it's just not that easy to just call up another team and make a deal or make a signing. Like it's not easy. So I just think the White Sox
I just think they have some movable assets.
Yeah, they do. I'll take the under too.
Aaron Bummer would be very valuable to a team,
including their own.
And they already showed they're selling high on Jake Berger, got rid of Jake Berger. Like, it should mean anybody that has a hint of value should be available as the White Sox.
They shouldn't be in the untouchable. They shouldn't be in the untouchable business right now.
You are rebuilding. AJ said they were rebuilding at the trade deadline. They broke it down, so why not break it the whole way down? Anyway, we're cutting straws on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, let's move on.
All right, I got two other things I'm
over White Sox stimulator right now.
Oh, let's talk about the Cubs then.
No, we're not talking about them. I'm over Cubs too.
No, we're going to go to a much rosier picture. Let's actually just go straight to Oakland. John Fisher spoke to the people yesterday. We're going to spend some time after this, Russ, going over our thoughts, but wanted to give you the stage because you're not allowed to talk to John Fisher. No humans are. He's maybe not even a human. I don't know. He wouldn't allow the people to ask him questions, but he spoke. And, we should feel bad for him. What do you think?
To say that I've been hurt more than you have as fans is wild for somebody to say. I don't know what value he feels that he got from saying something like that. And I think everything we've seen from the Oakland A's organization in the last couple of years tells you everything you need to know. And a fan base that spends their hard-earned dollar, has watched teams there in Oakland for decades and teams be successful. And now you look at a team that has to go out there and on a nightly basis, fans don't expect that team to go out there and be able to compete. Like, we talk about that word compete all the time. Like, what does that even mean to an Oakland A's fan, right? Okay, we lost 105 games, and we're going to do that for the next 5-6 years. And then there's this unrealistic expectation that, okay, they get to Vegas and all of a sudden they're going to start spending money and then they're going to start winning. Like, it doesn't necessarily work like that. So it's really unfortunate that that's the way things have gone there. I think it sucks that the A's are going to leave Oakland and go to Vegas because it's an organization that has such a rich history. And I just think you do yourself a disservice as an ownership group when you tell your fan base that cares about your organization, that cares about your franchise, that no, I listen, the last couple of years has been way harder on me than it's been for you. And like it's unfortunate. It's sad.
We always ask owners to talk more, and then when they do
Yeah.
talk, they're so out of touch
Yeah.
that it seems like we shouldn't have them talk, and yet I want them to talk. I want the John Middletons to come out and talk about how he has a bag of baseballs and he's throwing them to fans. I want a Steve Cohen to talk about the fact that, you know what, he did screw up, you know, the way the path of the organization went, and now he's going in another direction. Like should owners be not more accountable to fans, but more like in touch with what fans want?
Be human beings, right? Yes. Yeah. I think something that, and this is it's unfortunate that it happened this way, but I think it goes to this point that we're making. I think in the last 24 hours, you've seen the respect that people had for Peter Seidler, owner of the San Diego Padres, who loved baseball, who loved people, and who wanted to show fans time and time again, I care about the things that you care about, and I'm going to show you I care about the things that you care about. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the money because, yes, that's a big part of it, especially when you own a baseball team and you have to invest in that product. But I think Peter Seidler showed fans that, man, I love baseball just like y'all do. And I think fans have had issues with ownership groups more and more as time has gone on, because the farther we've gone, the more it feels like these ownership groups don't necessarily care about baseball, don't necessarily care about the product that's out there. And it's just a line on an Excel spreadsheet. And so I think when you have owners like John Middleton and Peter Seidler who say, no, I want not only a team that goes out there and competes, but competes for championships. And I'm going to do everything in my power with the resources that I have, with the resources that my partners have. And we're going to try to make you proud as a fan base.
So part of this coming up is that the owners are going to vote yes. We're cool with the relocation. We're not going to charge him for it. We just want to move on. We don't even know if this is the best option, which was the crazy part. They did the research, and if you read the article from Evan Drellick in The Athletic, I mean, it was not super convincing, at least from the people that he spoke with, in terms of what they thought was going to happen there. So my question is, do you think that fans will travel there? Because I think the A's brand is shot, and fans in Vegas are going to reject the team. You know, it's like, I don't know. It's like, you know how like animals, like there's certain animals where it's like the mom will just like reject it or some shit. Maybe, I don't know where I'm going with this, but
what are you talking about? What is Russ? What's he talking about?
AJ took me to a festival this weekend.
Oh, I saw.
do you think Vegas fans are going to be like, oh, this is just like the Knights, this is awesome? Like, I think most people in Vegas are going to be like, we don't want this piece of shit brand from this owner that I cannot root for. This is not us. And so I think that alone is not being factored in, that you're not going to get people being like, oh, I'm going to travel here and spend 3-4 days going to a series. Like, sure, you'll get the Yankee fan that happens to line up being there, but other than that, I think they're in for a very rude awakening.
Here's my thing, Scott. You're a young dude. You outside. You're in the streets. Like, if you have the option to go to a Vegas A's game or go see Usher in concert down the street, you know what you're doing. And it's not going to the A's game. And I also think a lot of people, there's many people who live in Vegas that are transplants. They already have their team. So I think it's going to be a lot harder of a transition than many people think right now.
Why are the owners pushing this through? Is it because, well, they all say, you know, if we want to do this sometime, then we don't want to block this guy? Is this just a good old boys club? Is this something where they're going, you know, well, I'm okay with, because they're going to start getting revenue sharing because they're now going to the smallest TV market and the revenue is going to be so much smaller. So the owners are kind of hamstringing themselves.
I don't necessarily have the answer to that one, Craig. I think when you look at the fact that Tampa had a plan where it's like, hey, we're staying in Tampa, we're not leaving. Then it's like, all right, so now that's off the table, the A's. and you couldn't figure out anything else or expansion, things like that, until you handled the A's issue. So then you look at, well, what other viable markets are there to even have a baseball team? I know Nashville's been thrown out there. People talk about Charlotte all the time. You go back to Montreal. Like, I don't know how many viable options are there that you can viably go to in the next 5 or 6 years outside of Vegas is a situation that I think they've been in. Like, I don't know what's a realistic alternative to Vegas to people in the game.
Yep.
That's fair. That's fair. Just it's listen. I've said this before. Some of my best friends live in Vegas. Every person they've talked to, every person I've talked to there, they want no fucking part of the Oakland A's. They want their own team, like they got with the Golden Knights. If you even look at the Raiders don't do that well. You know why? Because the Raiders people are still the Oakland, the LA old Raider fans that are coming. A lot of the Las Vegas people, they go to watch other teams. Like, let's say the Bears are there, or the Rams are there, or the Chargers, or whoever they're playing. Those are fans of their team, and they make a special trip to Vegas. In baseball, there's so many damn games. It's hard to plan a trip around. I'm going to go watch the Yankees play the A's in Vegas. Oh, it's in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. People are like, no, I got to work, dude. Like,
so different.
Yeah, it's a different. It's a different
games
animal.
versus 10.
So speaking of people that are going to be on the move here, Russ, Matt Chapman. Okay, Scott thinks that he's going to be the highest paid free agent besides Shohei Ohtani on the market.
That's slander. That's not true.
It's not slander. It's true.
Nope. There's pitchers that are going to get more. Bellinger's going to get more. My point was, and I was right at least on this front, both of you guys said, oh, he should take the qualifying offer. No, he shouldn't. If he's stupid, he should take it. But read the market. There's barely any position players available. Elite defense has shown an ability to be a star player.
Okay.
Is still an above average hitter, even in a quote down year. Great clubhouse guy. Scarcity with position players. Russ, how am I doing?
All right, Scott. So I was listening in when you made your case for Matt Chapman. First month of the season, OPS over 1,100. Fantastic. Elite defense and everything. From May to the end of the season, had a 659 OPS. And I know for a fact that that is going to scare some teams. They know everything that you said about being a great clubhouse guy. Check. The defense is still there. Check. He's only 30 years old. Check. But I know there are going to be some teams that say, man, coming off a 659 OPS after April, it's going to be tough. Now, I think he does, like you mentioned, benefit from the fact that it is a down market for position players. And being a guy that's not over the age of 30 yet, I think he will benefit. And I think Matt Chapman will be fine. Still get a multi-year deal, still get paid and all that. But I don't know if he's necessarily going to break the bank. Maybe he will. And maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe you can do a victory lap in the next couple of weeks, Scott. But I just think you have to acknowledge after May 1st to the end of the season, 659 OPS.
How much do you think he's getting? Okay. What's breaking the bank? Let's throw numbers out here. Because I'm not talking about the player going forward. All I was talking about, I'll be very clear here, is that qualifying offer, ridiculous for someone like him, given the market, and his representation knows that, and he is going to be nicely paid if he wants. Sure, there'll be teams. Also, remember, it only takes one to be interested at a certain level, right? And there definitely will be teams that will try and throw something shorter for a higher average annual value his way. But I bet you there will also be some teams that throw him a longer term offer out there. And I'd say at worst case scenario, he's not getting what he wants. He still gets a deal that's at least a few years with an opt-out after year 1 or 2. That's my point. With a guy like this, you don't have to do the 1-year platform deal, because I think he's earned enough to be able to say, hey, sign me for 3 years, 60, and I get an opt-out if he's not getting to the, say, 100 mil that he wants.
Okay. I hope Matt Chapman gets every dollar there is. Okay. I hope every player gets every freaking cent they can get out of every year, because it's a short window that you're allowed to make money. On this one, though, with Russ, I'm looking at his last 3 years. I'm not looking at just the last year. Okay. 2021, 716 OPS. Okay. 2022, 757 OPS. 2023, 755 OPS. Now, let's not forget he also had hip surgery, right? I think he had a shoulder problem at one point. The hip thing is the one that would scare me. I know he's won a Gold Glove, but Gold Gloves, once you win one, you kind of win a bunch in a row if you're just healthy and stand out there. a lot of times. And Scott's going to say no, but trust me.
I disagree
No,
with that.
that's bad.
AJ.
I disagree with that.
Also, guess
Hey,
what? I'll drop
We're
this.
not
Listen,
in
he's
the
a great
2000s
defender.
anymore.
He's a great
You guys
defender.
are missing the boat on the offense too. Can I tell you why?
17 homers, 54 RBIs is elite offense.
You're looking at the wrong
in Toronto.
numbers.
In Toronto? Holy shit!
Russ, you talk to plenty of front office people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most of them are not former players. They're stat people these days, okay? They're looking at numbers, and they're trying to project forward. Average exit velocity for Matt Chapman this past season. I'm telling you what people look at that are making decisions.
Dylan Lawson's on line 2 calling you right now. The guy you blasted. Go ahead.
You think he's the only one that's into the numbers I'm going to list? I'm the messenger. I'm telling you what teams value, including, yes, the Yankees very much so. Average exit velo, 98 percentile. Barrel percentage this year, 98 percentile. Hard hit percentage, 100 percentile.
So he was unlucky.
Check his angle. What's his angle?
Listen, I can find a stat to make anything look good or bad.
I'm telling you
what
what
he hit
front
on
offices are going to look like.
In the afternoon, when the grass was wet and the sun was at a 22-degree angle. Tell me that.
Russ, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that there are not half the front offices, at least in baseball, that are going to drool over those numbers and think that they're going to tap into another level here, because he's also had good production in the past. It's not like this is a bad baseball player either. Like, we just went from Tim Anderson's 60 OPS plus this past season to Matt Chapman's, what was he this past season? 110 or something like
108.
that? 108. Okay. Help me out here.
You're right, Scott. Front offices look at those numbers. However, I just think that they're going to have both sides of the coin. They're going to say, all right, he crushes the baseball, maybe hit into some bad luck after May 1st. However, those numbers are staggering after May 1st. And like AJ mentioned, if you look at the last 3 years, all right, what are we looking at? Are we looking at an above average offensive player going into his age 31, 2, 3, and 4 season? Or are we looking at a guy who had his peak in that year we had the 750 OPS? I think teams ask themselves questions like this, and then you have to make the right decision for you. Are you going to make what you might consider a gamble on a guy who you haven't seen have that consistent offensive production? Or are you going to say, hey, we love the glove, but we can't risk making that gamble on a guy we don't know can do that for the long haul? I think teams ask that.
Real quick, Russ, before we let you go, we're having Mendy on Carlos Mendoza. What's the one question that Russ Dorsey would ask Carlos Mendoza, new manager of the New York Mets?
I would ask, after everything that happened, everything that he saw happen with the Mets in 2023, how does he as a manager come in and put his stamp on the 2024 Mets to turn the page? Simple as that.
Love it.
Good one. Let's go, Matt Chapman. I hope you get every dollar. He's
going to be a Cub. Matt Chapman to the Cubs.
Give me numbers. Give me numbers. Then we got to go. Give me numbers. What's he getting? Give me something.
He's going to get over
under $50 million.
He'll get over 50.
Okay.
But he has to have an opt-out. They'll do opt-outs or something, I feel like. It'll be like a 480.
Is that better than 120?
Yeah, but I'm just saying if he
1 year 20.
We never said he should take the qualifying offer. We said he was the one that, if you look at it, should have thought about it more than the rest.
Thought about it. I'll take 80.
Oh my god!
Come on, we got to go. What do you guys got? Give me a number. Give me a guess. Give me something in a ballpark.
I'll do AAV. Maybe you're looking at somewhere between 15 and 19 a pop, depending on what the years look like.
For 4 or 5 years? 5 years, 20. That's 100.
I just don't know 100. If a team is going to go 5, but we'll see.
Okay.
5 years, 18, with an opt-out after the first year.
Cool. Okay. I like it. We'll see what happens.
Cubs. To the Cubs.
Russ, thank you.
Thanks, Russ.
See you guys.